Hello, Secretary Clinton. I'm honored to have a chance to speak with you today. Thank you for taking time to be here with us. Would you share a few words to greet 경향포럼 audience?
Well, thank you very much. I am delighted to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue through technology. And I look forward to answering your questions, and I wish everyone present a very good day and an excellent conference.
Thank you. Let me start by asking your view on the democratic regression these days. Polarization and conflicts are increasingly pervasive. While countries like Korea and the US have adopted democracy as a national system, anti-democratic sentiments such as patriarchy, misogyny, and racial or regional discrimination remain prevalent in our daily lives. What do you think is the cause of this democratic regression in everyday life?
I think that's a very important question. I don't know that we have all of the answers. I believe that there are a number of social and economic and political factors at work. It seems to me that democracy is under a lot of pressure in countries like yours and mine to produce results for people. And I think political leaders, government officials, need to understand very clearly that people want to see that democracy works for them, that it doesn't just work for people at the top, people with a lot of money and influence, but it works for everyone up and down the income scale and across society. I also think that the age of technology, and particularly social media, has brought us many new opportunities, but it has also divided us and isolated us. People live more on their screens, on their phones, on their laptops than they do in the real world. And they become more and more separate from each other, and often only listen to opinions they already agree with. They don't feel any pressure to try to get out into the real world to meet people of different perspectives and experiences. And I think that the rise of social media has undermined our trust and our belief in truth. And in a democracy, you need both. You need to trust one another, citizen to citizen, and between citizens and leaders. And you need to have some agreed upon basis of facts in order to make decisions. And that is being undermined.
And in recent social conflict, there is a growing trend of opposing inclusiveness itself, which is the most concerning trend, I think. A prime example is feminism, where misogyny today manifests as hatred and attacks against the anti-misogynist movement itself. Unlike in the past, when it was mainly displayed through structural discrimination against women, it appears that misogyny has evolved into anti-feminism. Similar trends are observed with issues related to race, disability, and sexual orientation. Some states in the US have even officially opposed DEI initiatives. As a politician who has actively fought against discrimination and hatred for a long time, what are your thoughts on this development?
I'm very worried about the rise of hatred and divisiveness. And I think some of that is really caused by politicians and leaders who model it, who unleash it, who find their political position by dividing people against each other, by pointing fingers, by hurling insults. And that gives permission then for other people to feel unleashed as well and to exhibit signs of prejudice, discrimination, and bias. In a democracy where one of our fundamental values is that we are all equal under the law, we all have a vote, and that vote should be equally counted, and then we should abide by the results of our elections. It is very worrying that certain politicians and government officials try to insult and demean members of society. You mentioned misogyny. You mentioned discrimination against LGBTQ people. Much of that is to create fear and stoke hatred and have an us versus them mentality. Whereas what we should be doing is trying to figure out how we can all do better together, not divide ourselves and pursue our own interests at the expense of others, but how do we make the economy grow? How do we create more opportunity? How do we use everybody's talents instead of pushing them down, lifting them up? So I worry about this a lot because it is certainly a problem in real life, but it is an epidemic online. You know, the viral attacks, the vitriol against women, against gay people, against minorities of any kind is especially strong online. And that creates a sense of threat and insecurity when people are attacked online for stating an opinion or taking a position. We've got to become more tolerant and willing to listen to each other and learn from each other. And I hope that we will talk about this. The questions you're asking are very important, and that more leaders will say, you know, I want to bring people together. I don't want to divide people.
The next question is about the kind of the nation to nation. And countries around the globe are increasingly focused on nationalism. And critics argue that social media algorithms foster political polarization, as you mentioned. What is your take on the situation where people are immersed in illogical and intoxicating content, often disregarding justice, values, and reason itself? Are there ways we can use social media to develop democracy and serve as a forum for exchanging public opinion?
Well, of course, the original hope behind social media is that it would be a great connector. It would connect people through the power of technology, and people would also find others who they could relate to, they could learn from. And there still is so much of that on social media. But let's be honest, social media has been weaponized, and it's been weaponized in many parts of the world. It's been weaponized by governments for surveillance, for campaigns against certain kinds of people. It's been weaponized by big financial interests, particularly the tech companies, which have created algorithms that reward negativity, fear, hatred. You know, that's what captures people's attention online. And that's human nature. I mean, if you're fed a steady diet of negative information, and that's what the algorithms are sending to you all the time, you begin to think of the world in a negative way. And I really believe the tech companies have exploited the vulnerabilities of people on the social media platforms to make money, because the more you are addicted to social media, the more rabbit holes you go down following negative information and conspiracy theories, the more ads you will see, the more money will be made using your information, your data, invading your privacy. I think the whole world has a very big interest in trying to put guardrails up around social media. I particularly am worried about young people. We now have a lot of research which shows how vulnerable young people are to the impact of social media in their lives. They see perfect pictures of people. They will never be perfect. They are given information that is not accurate, but it affects how they see the world. And there's an increase in anxiety and depression and other kinds of problems among young people. So this is not just a political issue. Yes, it does drive polarization and divisiveness, and it increases hatred and fear between people. It also impacts brain development in young people. You know, our adult brains are not even fully formed until the age of 25. And the tech companies have really used the vulnerabilities of young people to addict them to social media. So I think we have conducted a big experiment on ourselves. I think our democracies have paid a price. And I think individuals, particularly young people, have paid a price as well. And the answer to that is for the whole world to decide to rein in the power of the tech companies' control over what we think, how we define ourselves, how we relate to each other, whether or not we know the difference between truth and facts and lies and, disinformation. So I would hope your country and my country would take steps to try to protect democracy and protect people, especially young people.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to discuss about inclusion a little bit, and which is one of the keywords of this year's 경향포럼. Inclusiveness fosters cooperation, and it is one of humanity's most powerful survival strategies. However, many people today seem to rely on confrontation rather than cooperation, and exclusion rather than inclusion. How can we persuade people to embrace cooperation and inclusiveness once again?
Well, you're absolutely right. The history of civilization is people learning to cooperate, learning to make common cause, working together to achieve some kind of objective, whether it's starting a fire or being in a hunt or growing food or solving a huge mathematical or other kind of problem. And yet we're living at a time that seems to place a value on conflict. And it's very troubling to me because diverse groups make better decisions. If you have people at the table who have different experiences, perspectives, expertise, you're going to come up with a better solution. We know that from all kinds of experience and research. If you narrow the group you're in, if you start excluding people, so you are only working with, living with, communicating with people who are just like you, that doesn't lead to better outcomes. In fact, it leads to stagnation in social relationships, in political decision making. So I think we have to keep making the case that we live in a diverse world. You can't escape that. Yet people are trying to build walls, trying to, find some safe space where they don't have to be with people who are not like them. That's not the real world. And one of the advantages that the United States historically has had is that because we are a nation of immigrants, we are a large pluralistic society, we've had so much positive energy because of that. People have worked hard. They've made contributions that have enabled us to really grow a great economy, create a great democracy. All of that is being attacked now by people who don't want diversity. And I think it's so short-sighted. I think it is undermining, the progress we could make together. So we have to have people who speak out in favor of it, and we have to have individuals, voters, who recognize we will be stronger if we're all in this together. And that is really the best argument for inclusivity.
Thank you. And speaking about the diversity, Barack Obama has been the only non-Caucasian US president so far. However, there have been African American secretaries of state, as well as 3 female secretaries of state, including yourself. What changes can be made by female or African American leaders and other minorities? What sets leaders from minorities apart from others?
Well, you're right that President Obama was our first black president, and I think that sent a very strong message to young people from every background that there is opportunity if you work hard and you make the commitment to achieve as much as you're capable of achieving. So right now, we have some excellent young leaders, like the young governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, who is African American. We have many women governors now. We have the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, who's an African American. We do have a lot more diversity in our elected officials. And I think what everyone hopes is that people will be judged on their merit, or as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the content of their character, that people will be given the opportunity to prove themselves and not be written off or dismissed because they're a woman or they're black or they're Latino or they're Asian or whatever they might be. I mean, one of the great, incredible achievements of the United States is a sense of forward movement, of, people doing better than their parents, of making, contributions and continuing to work hard for the future. So that's what I'm hoping. And I'm impressed by a lot of our young Democratic Party politicians in the United States, and I think that there's a great future for them. So I'm optimistic that we will continue to have diverse candidates who will be judged on their record, their ideas, their merits, and will continue to have leadership that really looks like America, reflects the best of America.
In that context, when do you think the U.S. will have the female president?
Well, I thought it would happen in 2016, but it didn't. So I'm not very good at making prognostications, but I hope it will be in my lifetime for sure. I would love to do that, be part of that. But I really don't know because, we have a very competitive presidential system. Parties don't choose the candidates. People have to run. They have to make their case. And so women have to be ready and able to get into the arena and to, present their credentials and then to compete. So I'm sure actually we'll have women run next time in 2028. We have a woman vice president with President Biden, Vice President Harris. So I'm hoping that we'll have a lot of good women competitors in the next election and the one after that, and hopefully, one will be elected. But I have to say, not just any woman. I mean, I have to agree with the woman that I vote for because I want a woman who is in line with my values, who believes in the kind of future that I want for my grandchildren. But if we get a woman like that to run, I'm certainly going to do everything I can to help her get elected.
Yeah, I think you already mentioned this a little bit, but I would like to hear more about your view on the double bind dilemma you mentioned. You said once, on the one hand, be smart, stand up for yourself. On the other hand, don't offend anybody, don't step on toes. I personally resonated a lot with this and really would like to hear your advice. And how did you overcome this dilemma in your personal life and in your career?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that as a woman in public life, you are going to be judged and criticized, almost regardless of what you do, how hard you try. It is just part of the human equation about how people think about women. You know, there's been so much research about this. If a man is viewed as ambitious, that's a positive. Oh, he's got so much ambition. He's working so hard. Gosh, he's going to go so far. A woman who is viewed as ambitious, that's a little bit worrying. You know, people kind of back off from that. So you have a double standard, the double bind, as you said. You know, how is a woman to be assertive, to be confident out in public without setting off alarm bells with people who say, oh, there's just something about her. She's like too assertive. She's too ambitious. She's too strong, whatever it might be. On the other hand, if you're too meek, if you're too quiet, if you're too careful, then you're not viewed strongly enough. How can this person represent me? How can this person hold power in an executive position if she talks too softly? So you're kind of in a total bind. And you just have to be yourself. You just have to be able to basically be who you are and talk the way you talk, make the case the way you make the case, do the best you can. Because if you start to try to twist yourself around to fit into these preconceived boxes that people put women into, you just won't come across at all effectively. And I see a lot of women who are quite bewildered by this. I mean, how are you supposed to behave? Because no matter what you do, you're criticized. And, you know, I've been in lots of political events, many, many, many. I don't even know how many hundreds or thousands. You know, men can get up there and they can raise their fist and they can pound the podium and they can raise their voice and they're viewed as strong. A woman who does that, and I've done that a few times, you know, that is off limits. Oh my gosh, you know, she's yelling, even though the man who just was talking was yelling too. I mean, you just have to be aware, but don't let it cripple you. You have to be yourself, and you have to prepare. You have to understand what you want to say. You've got to know your why. Why are you running for office? Why do you want to be in office? Why do you care about, the issues? You've got to be authentic to yourself. And that's what I always tell young women. Just be yourself, be prepared, and know you're going to be criticized regardless, but just get out there and do the best you can.
And also in your book, Hard Choices, the subtitle of the chapter Human Rights is Unfinished Business. And you have always raised your voice on the human rights of women, LGBTQ groups, immigrants, and other minorities. As the most memorable speech you have delivered as the Secretary of State, you have mentioned the one at the Palais des Nations in Geneva, which talked about the rights of LGBT groups. By the way, I actually watched the video again last night. How do you think human rights and democracy are correlated? And what kind of human rights issues draw your attention these days?
Well, first of all, I think human rights is an absolute requirement for democracies. In a democracy, we should be bound by the rule of law. We should treat people with respect. We should see people as equal before the law. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you love. You should be treated with respect. And that doesn't always happen, but the chances of it are much greater in democracies than in authoritarian regimes, where people are stripped of their human rights, where they are often abused and oppressed. So democracies have such an important role to play in ensuring the human dignity of every individual, people with disabilities, people from every minority group, obviously women, obviously the LGBTQ community. That is what sets us apart from dictatorships and authoritarian regimes and brutal dictatorships. I just feel so strongly about it. So in a democracy, we should all be looking for ways to prevent abuse. And that is something that I have spent much of my life trying to promote. And I'm worried because the world seems to be going backwards. A lot of the rights of women, of the LGBTQ community, are being undermined. And that's why even more people should be speaking up about protecting human rights and women's rights and gay rights and all the other rights of individuals that are inherently theirs. So I will continue to speak out on this. I thought we would have made a lot of progress, which we have, and that the progress would be protected, but it's being chipped away at.
Yep. Thank you. You mentioned the Democratic primary in 2008 in one of your comments before. And after losing the primary in 2008, you said, although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, it's got about 80 million cracks in it. And that moment was quite memorable to me as well. Many women still face various types of glass ceilings. And according to the glass ceiling index released by The Economist, Korea has consistently ranked at the bottom among 29 countries since 2013, for more than 10 years now. And what does the glass ceiling mean to you? And do you have any comment for women in Korea?
Well, I think, the idea of the glass ceiling is that you can look up and you can see through that glass and you can see opportunities for people. And very often women work hard in business. They work hard in the professions like medicine or in academia or in politics and government. And they feel like their hard work should take them up through that glass ceiling to be able to achieve a high position in their career. And very often they get higher and higher, but they can't get through that glass ceiling. I'll tell you a quick story. So the big tech company Salesforce, a few years ago, the founder, Mark Benioff, kept hearing how so many corporations ended up discriminating against women. And he thought, well, we don't do that. We're very advanced. We're very open. We're very diverse. But he commissioned a study within Salesforce. He said, I want to know what happens when men and women enter into the corporation over the next years. And so men and women enter the corporation at the same level of experience and education. They start off at the same position, same pay and benefits. Within 3 or 4 years, men were going ahead. And what Mark Benioff instructed his researchers to do is to try to find out why. And it goes back to what we were talking about. The woman who comes up with an idea is ignored. The woman who speaks up in a meeting is ignored. The woman who pushes her idea is viewed as too pushy. Whereas similar behavior by men at the same level is appropriate and rewarded. And he was shocked by that. So he did what I thought was very important, and he had his managers start asking themselves, well, wait a minute, am I maybe bringing some what are called implicit bias to these decisions? How can I be more transparent and more aware. Well, I think we have to do that in society, in business, and elsewhere, because there are so many hidden obstacles that keep women down, that relegate women to the sidelines. And part of it is, just the extra added family responsibilities that women have. And whether it's caring for children or caring for a sick relative or caring for elderly parents, women bear that responsibility to a disproportionate burden. I have been watching some of the demonstrations against women in Korea, some of the protests about women in public life, and I have been surprised that it has been so prevalent in politics and in business. And, a lot of men, young men, not only in your country, but elsewhere, are feeling that they're competing against each other, but then they're also having to compete against women, and there's so much competition. They really want to sideline women. They don't want women to compete with them for a few positions, to get into universities, to get into good jobs, to, run for office, whatever it might be. So I think we all have to do a better job of kind of talking about this in society and trying to convince both young men and young women that they really should be hoping to get the best person for whatever the job might be, and not try to sideline women so you don't have the competition. But I think it's a problem everywhere. It's not just a problem in Korea. It's an increasing problem everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It would mean a lot to me. Would there be any final words you would like to share with a 경향포럼 audience?
Congratulations on the 9th anniversary of the Forum hosted by Kinhan Shin-moon. I'd like to thank the hosts, including CEO Kim Sok-yong, for hosting this meaningful event and for this invitation.